So in this session we'll cover the basics of essay writing and address the question of how you should be approaching the task of writing an excellent essay. And I should begin with a warning. Writing an excellent essay is very difficult, but it is not, however, impossible. It is without doubt a very difficult task to produce an excellent essay, but it is, rest assured, doable, especially if you follow some of the guides and tips which I'll mention in the next sessions. If you've attended the lectures, seminars, if you followed the reading, then you have already begun to build the resources, both in terms of the knowledge and technique needed to produce an excellent essay. The next step is to plan and leave plenty of time to do research, but also to produce the essay. Realism is key here. You need to be realistic about how long it will take you to write a good essay. You need to be asking the following questions. What if the essay isn't finished on time? What if it proves to be the rumblings of someone who is sleep deprived and high on caffeine or whiskey? What if there is a computer failure, an emergency, or a distraction? So you need to be very, very realistic about how you are to plan this. And the good essays, or the excellent essays, are those who have been produced not the night before, but have been produced by careful planning and research. So not leaving plenty of time to produce the essay will not really help you to produce a thoughtful, informed and critical piece of writing. Not leaving plenty of time to produce the essay, to do the research, to think and to write will not enable you to produce an excellent essay. Indeed, typing the essay is only part of the process. The most important bit is actually that which precedes that. Researching, taking notes, thinking about the question, thinking about your argument, structuring it, but also editing your work. And we'll say more about structure, edit, developing an argument in what follows. More importantly, perhaps, and finally, leaving plenty of time does reduce stress. Why would you want to deprive yourself of this? The most important thing, as my supervisor always used to say, is this. A good essay should do three things. Number one, answer the bleeping question. Number two, answer the bleeping question. And number three, you guessed it, answer the bleeping question. If you answer the question, there is no chance, unless you submit late, unless you do not support your views or include any sources or totally misrepresent the ideas that you are discussing, or perhaps hand in a 500 as opposed to 2,000 piece of work, there is no reason why you will not do well. If you answer the question, if you think about ways in which you can answer the question, you already have the basis for getting a very good mark. So what do you need to do? You need to look at the questions. You need to think what the question is exactly asking you to do. And essay questions typically invite you to basically do two things. To describe something, to outline something, but also to critically discuss it. So any essay question will basically ask you to explain an idea, to give an account of an idea or a position, and to assess, criticize, and discuss it. It will also contain certain keywords or phrases that you'll need to explain or discuss. State of nature, Plato's account of justice, the ends justify the means. Answering the essay question, developing an argument, requires you to discuss these ideas, but also to critically engage and evaluate them. So this pertains to comprehension and understanding, but also critical analysis. And again, if you do both of these things in a structured, orderly, and careful and well articulated way, you'll do extremely well. If you're asked to explore a concept, then you need to do the following. You need to explore that concept in the context of a thinker's thought. If, in other words, you're asked to evaluate Plato's account of justice in the city, then what you should not do is open a dictionary and basically paraphrase or quote what justice is, right? If you are asked to explain what the word freedom is, opening a dictionary will not going to get you very, very far in terms of displaying an understanding of the way in which Rousseau or Douglas, let's say, used that term. So if you're asked to explore a concept, you need to explore that concept by explaining it and by understanding it in the way in which the thinker in question understands that concept. The next bit is, of course, to critically evaluate it. You should also be very, very careful in order to ensure that you're not producing a laundry list. Depth of analysis is more important than covering a myriad of stuff but not developing them in detail. So it's much better to focus on a couple of points, maybe 2 or 3 points, develop those insights in more detail rather than focusing on 6 or 7 issues without carefully elaborating them. The basic reason for this is that an essay, especially a 2,000-word essay, cannot really do everything. When thinking about a question, think about how the essay is going to be critical. Think about what the argument is going to be, the core argument that we will develop and present, but also how the essay is going to achieve depth, how you can discuss different arguments, different ideas in detail, how you can support them as carefully and clearly as possible. Essay questions, therefore, are broad, but excellent essays do discuss a smaller number of points in more detail. And in discussing those smaller points, those sub-arguments, you will be ensuring that your core, your overarching argument is sustained and developed. Some of the questions that students always ask has to do with the following issue. Should I write a for and against essay? Writing a for and against essay is something that you have been quite possibly encouraged to do when doing your A-levels. It is also possibly something that might initially look appealing, perhaps an easy way to tackle the essay. Just mention what is good about Plato's account and then what is bad. But it's not something that you should be doing for this or indeed for any other module in academia or whilst at university. And the reason for this is quite simple. If you write a for and against essay, you will muddy the waters. It will not be entirely clear what your overarching argument is. You can, without doubt, also raise some doubts or perhaps also acknowledge the merits of a position before you criticize it, but you should not structure your essay in a for and against manner. Because if you do that, if you say in the first section, let's say that cats are good, in the second section you might also want to say something critical about owning a cat or a pet, then you will confuse the reader. The reader will not be very clear what it is that which you're trying to say. A very good essay should develop a clear argument, and writing a for and against essay is not going to help you to achieve this. So, what is an argument then? So let's have a look at some common misconceptions about what an argument is. An argument is not simply saying that there are some good things in a theory or idea, but there are also some bad things. That's the for and against way, and this is something that I discourage you to do. An argument is also not simply saying that everything the author says is right without considering opposing viewpoints or criticisms, or without subjecting that argument to critical scrutiny. Equally, an argument isn't just simply explaining what an author thinks or what a theory proposes and then saying that you disagree with them. Again, you need to offer reasons which highlight and explain why an author's ideas might be problematic. To better understand perhaps the pitfalls of developing a for and against argument, consider or think about what happens in a courtroom, at least on TV. It's very, very unlikely to encounter, especially in various series which take place in courtrooms, it's very, very difficult to encounter a lawyer, a prosecutor, who will present their case in the following manner. We have before us this person who may or may not be guilty. The item which you have in front of you may or may not be the murder weapon. This individual may or may not have a motive. They may or may not have an opportunity, and they may or may not have committed the crime by being there at that moment. It's more likely to encounter a prosecutor who would make their case, their argument, in the following way. Ladies and gentlemen, before you have this individual, and in what follows, I will illustrate to you that this person is indeed guilty of this crime. They have had access to this particular weapon, they've had the opportunity, and they've been also in close proximity to the place in which the crime occurred. The defense will try to convince you and to offer reasons that this individual isn't innocent, but in what follows we will upset those reasons and will show that this individual is indeed guilty of the crime charged. I hope that you can immediately see the difference between the two approaches. The first approach is uncertain. It's structured in a for and against way. It does not really convince the reader or indeed the audience of the argument. It's very, very difficult even to detect an argument in the first monologue. The second, on the other hand, does contain a very clear argument, a very clear commitment. And the argument is supported by a series of propositions, a series of minor points which sustain that argument. In other words, an argument is a connected series of statements, a connected series of sub-arguments which are carefully supported and defended, and those are intended to establish or illustrate a core proposition, a core line of argumentation. And the argument itself is an intellectual process. Those propositions fit together neatly, and they sustain the overarching line of argument that you try to develop. Now, of course, developing your argument also requires you to plan your answer. And this is why, as we've already said, leaving plenty of time is important. Without planning, you will not be able to discern what your core argument, what is that which you really want to say in the essay is. So you need to make a plan. If you make a plan, if you write down what your argument is, what your aim is, you will then have to think about how you can better structure and develop your essay. By making a plan, maybe in a piece of paper, A4, maybe in Word, you will be able to develop your argument, to structure your essay, and also decide what further research you need to do in order to support your sub-arguments, your sub-points, and your overarching argument. It's always advisable to plan your essay in a linear fashion, section by section, point by point. And the reason for this is that the essay should present a connected argument, not just a series of discrete, disconnected observations. So if you plan it section by section in a linear fashion, if one section leads to the next, it feeds into the next, you will be better able to develop a sustained, connected argument. Your plan will also help you to see what is missing, how you're going to use citations, quotations, references, how you can draw on some of the other thinkers that we've covered in order to develop your argument. It will also help you to better establish where it is that you're actually going. It will also help you to check, once you've written the essay, against your plan, and to see if you've carried out the plan or if you've missed a step, which might require you to go back another paragraph or indeed a section, or perhaps do more research. So the plan will help you to remain committed to your core argument. It will prevent you from losing your way when writing your essay. It will help you that to answer the question, to ensure that you've answered the question and all of its constituent parts. But it will also help you to compare what you're trying to do, what you're proposing to do, against the marking criteria. Now, of course, plans and introductions are always bound to change. If you feel that, based on your reading and your research, there might be a better line of argumentation that you can pursue, then you can always revise your plan. But do make sure that your plan at least does have a clear idea, which is always bound to be subject to revision, about what is that which you want to say, the core argument, and also about the way in which you intend to develop the argument, the structure of the essay, what further research you should be doing, what subpoints you should be developing and elaborating in order to develop your argument. In the next session, we'll discuss in more detail how you can structure your essay.